My girlfriend's book club voted me out of her life like I was some character they didn't want in their story. Looking back, I should have realized what I was dealing with when grown women started treating my relationship like their personal entertainment project. I'm Ethan, 29, and I work as a fraud detection specialist for a regional bank here in Sacramento, which means I'm pretty good at spotting patterns that don't add up. My girlfriend Paige, 26, coordinated marketing campaigns for organic skincare companies, and we met 15 months ago at a trivia night at this local brewery where we both knew way too much about true crime documentaries. We clicked instantly over our shared love of Sunday morning farmers market browsing and lazy afternoons discussing serial killer psychology, and after 7 months of what felt like a genuinely healthy relationship, we moved in together to a decent apartment downtown. What I didn't realize was that Paige's tight-knit book club had been studying me like some kind of research project from the very beginning, openly debating my long-term potential during their weekly coffee meetings and basically scoring my behavior during what I now understand were strategically planned group activities. These weren't casual friend hangouts. They were evaluation sessions where 5 women in their mid-20s analyzed my every move like relationship scientists. I started noticing something shift around month 8 when Paige began seeking the group's approval before making any decisions about us, from simple weekend getaway plans to whether I could even attend their monthly wine tasting events at different members' houses. She'd come home from book club meetings with this weird energy, like she'd been downloading software updates about how to view our relationship, and suddenly everything I did required group consensus. I remember thinking it was sweet that she had such close friends who cared about her happiness. But there's a difference between supportive friendship and collective control that I was only beginning to understand. The balance had shifted completely, and I was no longer dating Paige. I was apparently dating her entire social circle, and they were keeping detailed scorecards on my performance as boyfriend material without ever actually getting to know who I really was. The official verdict came during their monthly pottery class gathering at this trendy studio downtown, where Paige's reading circle conducted what they actually called a relationship assessment like I was some kind of corporate merger they were evaluating. The leader of this operation was Natasha, this 30-year-old marketing manager who had appointed herself as the group's relationship expert despite being perpetually single, and she had prepared an actual presentation with laminated charts highlighting what she termed my concerning patterns. According to her professional analysis, my preference for quiet museum visits over loud concert venues demonstrated emotional unavailability, and my tendency to research facts before accepting their dramatic stories about workplace conflicts showed I was controlling and dismissive of their experiences. I arrived at the pottery studio to pick up Paige around 8:30, expecting to hear about their latest book discussion and maybe grab some late dinner together, but instead I walked into what felt like an intervention designed by people who had been watching too many reality TV shows. Paige was sitting in the center of this circle of women, all holding their poorly shaped ceramic bowls, and the moment I stepped through the door, she stood up and delivered what was clearly a rehearsed speech about how they had all unanimously agreed I wasn't compatible with her lifestyle and that our relationship needed to end immediately. She gestured toward her friends like they were some kind of corporate review board that had reached a definitive business decision, and Natasha nodded approvingly while the others sat there looking uncomfortably pleased with themselves for orchestrating this public breakup. I stood there for a moment, processing the absolute surrealism of being dumped by committee vote, then replied with what I thought was pretty measured composure that I appreciated the committee vote but had always thought relationships were between 2 people, not focus groups. I gathered my jacket and keys while these women exchanged nervous looks, suddenly aware of how their coordinated behavior might appear to someone outside their weird little circle, and walked out of that pottery studio knowing I had just dodged something much worse than a simple breakup. What I discovered later through Paige's yoga instructor made the whole situation even more disturbing than I had initially realized during that bizarre pottery studio confrontation. Apparently, Natasha had been covertly saving screenshots of every text message I sent to Paige for months, building what she called an evidence file, and maintaining a collaborative Google spreadsheet titled Ethan Compatibility Analysis that recorded my every perceived shortcoming with scientific precision. The group had been functioning like some kind of relationship surveillance team, monitoring my social media presence with the dedication of private investigators, calculating my text response intervals to determine my level of commitment, and even creating numerical ratings for my romantic gestures that they presented as objective relationship science. I learned they had been screenshotting my Instagram stories, analyzing the captions I wrote for photos with Paige, and maintaining detailed logs of how often I initiated date plans versus waiting for her suggestions, all while convincing her that this level of monitoring was normal friend behavior. When I finally confronted Paige about this digital stalking operation during a tense phone conversation 3 days after the pottery studio incident, she initially defended their behavior as supportive friends providing guidance and helping her make informed decisions about her future. But as I explained how privacy violations and group manipulation weren't typically part of healthy friendships, I could hear her slowly beginning to comprehend the actual scope of what had been happening behind the scenes. The book club had essentially been functioning as relationship investigators for months, methodically constructing a case against me while systematically persuading Paige that their collective consensus was more reliable and trustworthy than her own personal instincts about someone she had been living with and dating for over a year. The realization that 5 women had been treating our private relationship like their personal research project, complete with data collection and analysis meetings, was honestly more unsettling than the actual breakup itself. The deeper truth about what had been happening came to light when Paige made a shocking discovery that explained everything about Natasha's obsessive behavior patterns and the group's coordinated interference in our relationship. She found out that Natasha had been systematically engineering romantic breakups within their extended social circle for almost 2 years because she absolutely flourished when positioned as the central emotional anchor for everyone's personal problems and crises. This revelation emerged when Paige accidentally stumbled upon a private group message thread labeled Project Paige where Natasha had been outlining detailed psychological strategies to systematically turn her against me using influence tactics she had apparently studied through various online psychology workshops and manipulation courses. The messages revealed that Natasha's need for control reached far beyond simple dating interference, as she had methodically identified and removed anyone who could potentially threaten her role as the group's unofficial therapist and primary advisor on all life decisions. Paige realized that 2 other women in their circle had experienced similar relationship sabotage when their boyfriends started questioning the group's excessive involvement in personal matters, and in both cases, Natasha had successfully convinced them that their partners were toxic and manipulative. When Paige finally worked up the courage to challenge the morality of their coordinated meddling during their next book club meeting, the friends immediately labeled her as being manipulated and losing her identity to our relationship, which perfectly exposed their desperate need to maintain emotional authority over every single group member. The irony wasn't lost on me that these women who claimed to be protecting Paige from manipulation were actually the ones systematically manipulating her through guilt, peer pressure, and manufactured consensus designed to keep her dependent on their approval for every major life decision. About 4 weeks after our separation, Paige began to understand that she had essentially traded her personal independence for social validation when her former friends started aggressively controlling her attempts to meet new people or rebuild any kind of dating life. She started contacting me through various messaging platforms, leaving these lengthy audio messages where she detailed all of Natasha's manipulation strategies and expressed what seemed like genuine regret for allowing peer pressure to completely override her personal judgment about our relationship. By that point, I had already started seeing Jade, this brilliant museum education coordinator who actually appreciated my thoughtful approach to relationships and actively encouraged my freedom from the kind of manipulative group dynamics that had consumed my previous situation. Paige's reconciliation campaign became increasingly intense after she discovered Jade's existence through mutual friends, leading her to arrange unexpected visits to my workplace at the bank and coordinate delivery of expensive apology packages filled with handwritten letters and items from our relationship that I definitely didn't want back. Meanwhile, her former book club friends had initiated their own revenge operation against Paige for questioning their authority, establishing multiple fictitious dating profiles to try to deceive me into thinking she was already moving on successfully, and systematically circulating damaging stories about her supposedly obsessive tendencies throughout their broader social community in Sacramento. I watched this whole drama unfold from a distance while building something genuinely healthy with Jade, who found the entire situation simultaneously fascinating and disturbing from a psychological perspective, especially the way these women had weaponized friendship to maintain control over someone's romantic choices. The contrast between dealing with Paige's desperate attempts to undo her mistake and enjoying simple, honest conversations with Jade about museum exhibits and weekend hiking plans made me realize just how exhausting my previous relationship had actually become even before the official committee vote to end it. 10 months later, the whole situation reached its peak absurdity when Paige confronted Jade and me at a weekend culinary festival downtown where she and I had previously enjoyed sampling artisanal foods and discussing flavor combinations during happier times. She approached our booth during the busy afternoon rush while we were sharing this amazing Korean fusion taco and caused an immediate public scene, loudly announcing to anyone within hearing distance that Jade was merely a temporary replacement and that I was foolishly choosing surface-level attraction over authentic partnership with someone who truly understood my character. Natasha and her remaining supporters had deliberately attended the same food festival, positioning themselves strategically around the area, and they began broadcasting Paige's increasingly frantic emotional outburst live on TikTok while providing sarcastic commentary about her predictable breakdown and desperate attention-seeking behavior. I calmly introduced Jade as my girlfriend to the growing crowd of bewildered bystanders who had stopped eating their festival food to watch this bizarre drama unfold, briefly explained our history to help them understand the context of what they were witnessing, and then guided Jade toward another vendor area while Paige continued delivering her passionate speech about true love and authentic connection to an increasingly uncomfortable audience. The livestream footage spread rapidly through their local social networks within hours, with former members of the book club and other people from their extended friend group contributing harsh comments about Paige's embarrassing public behavior and expressing relief that I had managed to make such a lucky escape from what they now recognized as a completely dysfunctional social situation. Watching Paige humiliate herself so publicly while Natasha and her followers documented every moment for social media entertainment made me genuinely grateful for the committee vote that had forced me out of that toxic environment before things could deteriorate even further than they already had. 18 months later, I proposed to Jade during a private stargazing picnic in the mountains outside Sacramento, having finally found someone who genuinely appreciated my careful nature and independent thinking without trying to change or control either quality. Paige had completely distanced herself from her former reading group and invested several months in professional counseling sessions, learning to identify toxic influence patterns and working to restore her personal decision-making abilities that had been systematically undermined by years of group manipulation. She made one final attempt to reach me through a professional email platform at my bank, composing this lengthy message about requiring emotional closure and admitting how the group's manipulation had severely damaged her judgment and ability to trust her own instincts about relationships. I discussed her message with Jade, who thoughtfully endorsed my choice to maintain complete separation from that entire situation, and we decided to block Paige on all remaining social media platforms while we organized our intimate outdoor wedding ceremony with close family and genuine friends. Meanwhile, Paige's former book club friends continued actively seeking new recruits to fill the emotional void she had left behind, but she had finally gained enough courage and self-awareness to value authentic connections over superficial group belonging and chose healthy solitude over toxic collective approval that had nearly destroyed her life. The whole experience taught me that some people will try to vote you out of relationships that don't belong to them, but the right person will always choose you over any committee, council, or crowd that tries to interfere with what you're building together. Jade and I spent our honeymoon visiting museums across Europe, discussing art and history without anyone rating our conversations or analyzing our compatibility through spreadsheets, and I realized that real love doesn't require external validation or group consensus to thrive and grow stronger over time.